Good morning, afternoon, or good evening, folks. I'm your host and guide, Chris Roberts. I'm going to take you on a tour of the underground to help you prepare for what's really out there. Whether you're on the front lines battling the latest threats or leading the overall defensive strategy within your organization, my focus is to help you uncover the best ways, means, and methods to effectively and efficiently use actual threat intelligence within your company, providing you with more insights and practical ways to identify threats and reduce risks before they become incidents. Ready to dive in? All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you might be in the world listening in on this or watching this. Thank you very much for joining us on an episode. And I say we're going to have some fun with this one because this is the first of the CISO episodes. And I am both grateful and honored to be joined by a couple of amazing folks. First and foremost, obviously, we've got Danny with us, who is organizing the heck out of this blasted thing to make sure that the squirrels that we are actually turn up at time and do all the right stuff. But I have an amazing good friend, Woody Groton, and Kevin Burns as well. So I'm going to shut up for a second. And if you two gentlemen would please love to introduce yourselves, I'm going to sit back and let you do it for a minute.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Woody Groton. Known Chris for, I don't know, feels like decades, probably 5 years. But I met him through the Cyber Shield exercise and then Cyber Yankee. So I am the Chief Information Officer for a company called Draper in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Came there about 6 months ago from being a CIO G6 in the New Hampshire National Guard. And I still continue to serve as a cyber branch colonel in the National Guard. I'm currently a brigade commander. So I still have the military connections, and being a cyber officer, have a lot of things going on with cyberspace and cyber command, NSA, things like that. With Draper, we're research and engineering research and development company. Charles Stark Draper, PhD type, came from MIT and started the company like 60 years ago, something like that. Initial claim to fame was the Apollo mission, the lunar lander, helping do that, and then guidance, navigation, and control in support of the U.S. Navy. So that's kind of how we got our start, and we have our hands in everything across the Department of Defense, intelligence community. We do commercial work in biotechnology, all that stuff. So it's a really exciting place to work, and it's really fun to be, the IT lead for this company. And, because we were talking intelligence and so important, and really, that's why I invited our Chief Information Security Officer, Kevin Burns. So I'll let him give a little bit of his background as well.
Thanks, Woody. Yeah, so I'm Kevin Burns. I'm Draper's CISO. Been with Draper 6 years now. Prior to that, I was the CISO for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in state government. I spent 23 years in state government, various roles. And so, I was currently at Draper. I handle the corporate side, a little bit of bleed into the classified side, maybe just from some consulting and some help, right? I'm actually only 36 years old, but this is what happens when you become a CISO, you age. In 30 years, real short time, right? So, a year ago, the beard was black and so was the hair, but now this is what happens, right? So I'll get to the point where, there's no hair left, and then we'll join this meeting and we'll all look alike except for Danny. So thank you for the opportunity to join today. Looking forward to the discussion.
Nice. Thanks, guys. And again, gratefully appreciated. So we might as well just kind of jump in and have a conversation about information and intelligence. I mean, we've all come at it from various different angles. I'm intrigued, obviously, on the commercial side, less on the government side of things, but definitely on the commercial side of things. How do you view intelligence these days? If you're sitting inside the organization, you're looking at what's happening. I'm really intrigued by how either and both of you view intelligence, both from the Draper side and also just in the grander scheme of things. So, either please feel free to chime in on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start just, again, high level, and then Kevin will chime in, what the CIO meant to say. But that's kind of one of the, like what the colonel meant to say. Even looking at it from a military perspective, right? You have information and then you have intelligence. Information is just that raw data that's coming in. It hasn't been analyzed. There's no value add. Hey, this is just the information that we've got, whether 0 day, whatever. Intelligence is taking that, putting value add to it, doing the analysis and the so what. And I think one of the things that we've seen over the years is the intelligence community, we need to be able to be faster, right? To get that to the people that actually need it. Not so much like, hey, the bad guys are over there. This is what they have. This is how many tanks they've got, all that kind of stuff. But with cyber, because of the speed of cyber, that's where the machine data and things like that, automation to keep up with it. So I think that's part of the issue that we deal with. And I'll let Kevin talk a little bit. Again, we have a great relationship because of who we are with our partners, our
Yeah.
federal and state partners as well.
I mean, as well as I do from like within the intelligence community, I think you hit on a really good point, which is the speed and effectiveness of turning information into intelligence and then making it actionable.
Right.
I think that's something where in the commercial world, the Intel community is having enough of a challenge doing it. In the commercial world, I think they haven't got to a point where they understand how that's got to happen so quickly as well. I'm interested because you've seen both sides of the fence now and you're seeing both sides. Give me your thoughts on the commercial side of that world and go, okay, what could they do? What should they do? And where they need to think of next?
Yeah, Kevin and I talked about this a little bit, kind of preparing for today. That as he was kind of alluding to, as a professor for a master's program in cybersecurity, he has all these students who are federal employees, right, or in the intelligence community, et cetera.
Yeah.
So building those relationships, I think doing that outreach and being proactive about it and developing the relationships, as we say, kind of in the emergency response, emergency management, it's always better to exchange business cards before the disaster, not at the
Yes.
disaster, right? So it's the same thing. So develop those, and they certainly want to help, and having a relationship with your state fusion center, with law enforcement, whoever you think the best partners are going to be, FBI, Secret Service, depending on what sector you're in. Department of Homeland Security, Intelligence and Analysis, they're extremely value-added partner for us. And there's also the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or DHS CISA, cybersecurity advisors. Two of our mutual friends, Rich and Mike, are now working with DHS CISA as well, and obviously bring all of their military experience to that. So having those relationships and knowing who to call, and hopefully even better, they're pushing the information to you, and they do push it out to us. I think that, and it's interesting too, because you talk about some of the three-letter agencies, they certainly work with vendors as well to get information, because they don't do it all themselves, whether it's open source or whether it's feeds, something like a Cyber6 or Recorded Future, et cetera. They want to get it from as many sources as they can as well. And then, that's a value add piece of fusing that information and trying to be predictive, those types of things, get ahead of it versus being reactive.
I think this is where it gets interesting because, especially from the Draper standpoint, there are certain types of intelligence, and we all talk about this, is whether you're looking at some of the adversarial intelligence, the business intelligence, breach machine, or anything like that. I'm intrigued as to, is that a situation, or is that, no, we actually want to digest it all and we'll make our determination, or look, I don't care about the adversarial side because there's just so many of them, or I do care about it. So what are your thoughts on this? And I'm interested.
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. I think you do have to be concerned, and a company like Draper, where we're part of the defense industrial base, so we have to be concerned with nation state actors, as well as, criminals though too, ransomware. I mean, that's every board member's biggest fear, right? The risk of ransomware, because it's so much in the news, and it's so prevalent, and it's exponentially increasing. So that, I think it's all of the above, right? I think a smaller business or a mom and pop kind of outfit, or individuals even, I don't think they're as worried about the advanced persistent threat actors. But something like Draper, we have to be. I think any of the larger corporations, especially, or we talk about critical infrastructure, electrical sector, water sector, et cetera. So oil and natural gas, they all have to be concerned about that too, because it's the military's term for it is gray zone operation. So that's the bad guys, keeping things below the threshold of armed conflict. And, we're seeing that even in the Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Toes up against the line on that one. Here's something, we understand it. We get it. We live and breathe this stuff on a regular basis. What's the message, and how much and how kind of a message do you take to a board of directors to help them not just understand it, but also realize it's got to be part of what's going on with the business go forward?
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be everything in terms of risk. That's what they're focused on, is what's
Right.
the risk to the mission, risk to reputation, all of that, because that they're very high level, and again, they just, some recent experiences from our board, like, hey, we want you to come in and talk about cybersecurity. That's an extremely broad topic, right? And oh, by the way, you've got 20 minutes. So right.
Yeah.
So looking
Yeah.
at the risk, enterprise risk manager, we have that, and we have our categories of risk. What we're doing, to try to burn that risk down, how that's going to target our investment. That's the other piece the board is looking at. Because IT
Yeah.
costs money, right? Cybersecurity is expensive. It's, you guys just always want more money. You always want more money. Well, here's the reason why we need to look at, this is why we need to look at DLP. Or this is why we need deep packet inspection. Or this is why we need X, Y, Z, and we've talked, we've talked about too, it's not just that crusty outside core now, it's east and west as well, right? It's looking at behavior, looking at anomalies. It's looking at, the whole zero trust architecture, which is a great buzzword. It's a great marketing term. But I mean, as that concept is maturing, what does that mean, and how do we actually get after that? So I think it's just funny. I mean, you're seeing executive orders from the president talking about mandating zero trust architecture when we don't even know what that is yet, right? And how can you have zero trust? Well, it's maybe we want to try to work through what that looks like of, more of whitelisting than blacklisting, those types of, looking at anomalies, looking at AI and machine learning. You've talked about that a lot too, right? What does that mean? A lot of buzzwords of that. But really, I think just, having your baseline and then looking at anomalies from your baseline can kind of help with that too. So that's, again, getting back to the board, keeping everything in terms of risk. That's really what they want to focus on. What is our risk? What is our tolerance? And what are we doing about it? And for some things, it might be that we have to accept that risk, just because there's no option to do it, or we can't afford, to buy it down.
Yeah, I think that's an important one, is actually going in there and going, and this is where I have a huge friction with, again, we mentioned marketing and everything else. I got a huge friction because unfortunately so many companies come in and go, oh, we can protect you. We can fix it. We've got everything covered. I'm like, no, you don't. Absolutely no chance in hell. Now, you can help me, to your point, reduce the risk. You can help me carry an effective message to the board. You can help me raise my awareness. I mean, one of the big things for me is we, as inside the IT and InfoSec area, have always said we can protect the borders. We've got your edge. We've got this. We've named things after, but everything outside of that, we have no clue as to what's going on. To me, that's where that information intelligence comes in. Is literally being able to poke your head above the parapet and go, what's coming at me?
Right. Yeah, what are the trends? What's emerging? What are the threats that are over the horizon that we need to think about now, so we can, again, target our investments? Because, like you say, money.
Absolutely. Because the board of directors is going to be like, what's to your point? Hey, I gave you this much last year. I'm giving you much this year. What the hell are you going to need from me next year? Well, I don't know, but let me give you intelligence and information on where the market's going, where we're seeing, what we're seeing threat actors do, where we're seeing people focus. And like anything, security is going to be this ongoing developing journey, and you build information and intelligence into that journey to help you basically course correct when you need to.
Exactly. And, people talk about, what are the roles, what are the responsibilities of a CIO? Well, I mean, I think a lot of us will say 40% or maybe more is cybersecurity now. We still have a CISO, and that's his focus, but it's got to be a big focus of mine too, because cybersecurity really should be inherent into everything that we do, and it should be integrated from the very beginning. All the things that, again, I've heard enough Chris talks that I can almost cut back some of it, which is great. But, like I mentioned, you're an influencer in many areas, first and foremost being InfoSec and incident response and things like that. So I think that's another piece, talking about the board is, what is our resiliency, and what is our plan? What is our business disaster recovery in terms of enterprise risk, and how can we, be resilient? Because, it's just like Omicron, right? People say, hey, it's not if, it's when you get it, but hey, if you're prepared, or you're healthy, vaccinated, however you feel about that, whatever, you're going to be more resilient to it. And even if you get it, you're still, you won't end up in the hospital, hopefully. Right. So,
and it's huge. It's absolutely, it's really been fascinating and a little scary, but it's been fascinating these last 2 years to watch how humans have mimicked what we're doing in information, or not doing in information security. These last 2 years have been an amazing case study. because when you put, to your point, you put risk in front of somebody and go, hey, live, breathe, sneeze, all this other stuff. I have options for you. And just to see what does and doesn't happen and how humans react and where they're reacting and what they're reacting to has been absolutely fascinating to see. And it's really, again, as we've talked to boards, as we've talked to leadership, as we've talked to users in the community and said, here are the things that our messages had to change because we've had to learn 2 years. I've got, in some cases, to your point, you got life and death decisions to make in real life. And yeah, I can't have that same conversation with you in the digital life because it's getting to that point, but it isn't at that point just yet. So it's been interesting to see what kind of messages we have to actually take to people to get them to listen more effectively.
It's funny too, because malware, we talk about malware all the time, but I mean, it's also virus, right? Antivirus, that whole
Mhm.
biological, computer bug, the biological aspects, and,
Yeah.
and trying to have an analogy for that, right? Of what that means. So, so I think it is kind of interesting to see what, the parallels between a global pandemic from a virus and a global pandemic that predates that
in
of
in the
cybersecurity.
digital world. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only challenge, and this is where it gets really frustrating, is it's and a good friend, Ryan Cloutier, who we're going to grab on this at some point in time in the future. Ryan's got a really nice way of looking at it. We're analog humans in a digital world. In the physical world, I can see the body on the ground. I know when maybe what I have or have not done has unfortunately affected that individual. In the digital world, it's so much harder to get people to think that way, which is why back to the board of directors walking in there, we used to walk in there and go, well, yeah, the sky's falling, and that never worked. I'm going to pick your brains on this one because you've been sitting in that CISO seat in that neck of the woods now for 6 years. So if we talk about information and intelligence, what are you looking for? If I come to you and go, hey, I've got every product under the sun, I got all the solutions, I can fix all of your issues, and after you've shot me and tasered me for over promising and under delivering, what are you looking for? What do you want?
So I want information and intelligence that's geared towards my industry, Department of Defense, right?
Mhm.
And it's always been that way in whatever information security role I've fulfilled or been in. Otherwise, I am trying to boil the ocean, and there's no way I can ingest that information, right? I have to care about what I have to care about, right? Which is keeping Draper's intellectual property, controlled unclassified information, all of the stuff that some of the weapons that we help build, right? Keep that safe. And
Mhm.
so I want to know what the threats are against that, and that's what I care about. If I try to ingest too much, I'll never be successful. I'll never be efficient. And so I really focus on the information that's truly helpful into my silo. And I know that's a little short-sighted, but
Mhm.
I can. That's the only way I can find to be efficient, right? And that's the only way I can push it
Yeah,
down
that
to my
makes sense.
staff to be efficient, right? So that's
Yeah.
what I care about.
Now, taking that, so now you've got that. How are you taking that data? And then I don't want to get into specifics, but how are you operationalizing that and going, okay, this is something that's maybe adversarial, this is business, this is operational. Is that a more manual intensive process, or have you got to the point where you can actually ingest and very rapidly distribute effectively?
Yeah. So we've been fortunate, and that's what he knows. As he's learned
Knocking
since he's
on wood.
come here in June, right? Getting funding is tough, right? Because with such a
Yeah,
small, tiny staff that I have, I need all the automation and tools I can get. But that said,
right.
the more tools I get, the more bodies I need, right? So I don't want to be that guy
Yes,
that
unfortunately.
I don't want to be that guy that uses 20% of the tool because I don't have enough bodies to get its maximum. So we've matured our SIM, we've matured some technologies to the effect where they're actually showing value when we take the information that I care about, right? Which is, so I've got a
Yeah.
really good personal relationship with our DSH agent. She and I go back
Good.
15 years, right? Um,
Right.
she gives us real intel. The folks from the
Mm.
FBI who have been students in my class at BC, they give me real intel, actual. Here, Kevin, put this in your SIM, see what comes out. So we've got some
Mhm.
really good staff information to start with, and then we have some good technologies that actually produce something to look at.
That's key, and I think this is where it gets in. It's a balance, and this is I keep hearing this, and I think this is key because we talk a lot about automation. I think it's necessary. There's just so much stuff out there, but that human element is still so critical and so crucial. You know, you still need the contacts inside the agencies, the contacts inside local, federal, state law enforcement. You still need to hear from the boots on the street, feet on the ground, whatever you analogy you want to use to go, hey, you see all of this, but this is what we're hearing. Focus on this stuff over here. I think that's critical, and I don't think people give that quite as much credit as needed.
I'd like to ingest something else, which I don't think is thought of enough, right? So whatever I have left for years, right? Um, as a CISO, you know, if the heart attack doesn't kill me, right? If I don't become a raving lunatic by drinking too much, right? I like whiskey, Chris. Just saying, call me. So, 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 but you got to do two things. You got to keep the staff you have, and you've got to make sure that they're making the same relationships that you've built, right? I can't be that guy that says, oh, don't talk to my FBI friends. Don't talk to my DHS friends. I'm going to introduce all those folks that work for me so that they become friends and they have those relationships with those persons, right? I hit 60 this year, but my staff is in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And the key is, again, two things. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but keeping them. And that's a huge thing, right? You spend a ton of time making sure that they know they're valued and truly loved for the human beings they are, right? I believe that with my whole heart and body. And then two, making sure that they have those relationships with those persons so that when I'm gone, sick, whatever, retired, right? Stealing Woody's guitars from behind him when he's skiing at Vail with Chris, right? Whenever Danny and I break in. So, you know, you have to make sure that they can then continue when you're gone, and those relationships. And then you've got to think about what the ages are of those persons in the FBI too, right? So that all this continues, right? For the success of Draper, not for the success of me, but for the success of Draper. And that's lost. Those subtleties are lost in management. I don't think that's enough being thought about that retention and making sure your staff build those relationships.
Yeah, that's huge. This is one of those. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit inside. We've lost the soft skills. We've lost the ability to communicate and collaborate, cooperate effectively. I mean, there's some bits of it there, but we've lost those skills, or we never really, some of us never really had them to begin with and had to learn them on the fly. Yeah, that's huge. And I think that's one thing, you know, again, we talk about, you know, how do we help others when somebody's watching this? We all talk about technology. We're like, oh, I'll go buy another piece of tech, it'll solve it. There's no, we need the humans to effectively run it. And by the way, those humans have got to have bloody good relationships. Otherwise, it's not going anywhere.
Totally agree. It's huge.
Yeah.
Yep, those soft skills pieces are lost in today's day and age. We don't think enough about them, right? And we need to do that more for the sake of the staff, for their success, right? And so I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, no, that's a cool one. And that to me is, I mean, the individuals drive that, but I think that's also a company philosophy as well. It's one of those where I've unfortunately seen it in too many organizations where leadership and management's like, no, let me go get something technology-wise to solve this. And I'm like, no, we've got to go back to the human side of things. Again, hate to say it, and Danny, close your ears on this one. I'm going to blame vendors and sales and marketing for a chunk of that, because I've seen it. We've all seen it. How many companies are now advertising the simple fact of like, oh, we got 250,000 or 500,000 people or 2 million people less in this available pool of people. I'll buy this bit of tech and you don't need as many people. I'm like, no, quit that shit. You know, at some point, automation is going to take over and kill us all. But I think we're a few years away from that, thankfully.
And so some of the conflicts of managing that, right, is that you're 100% right, because the vendors and the marketing people sell such a great, on the technology side, vendor, right? They get the staff to buy into that this is a panacea, this is a utopian tool, and it will solve all our problems, right? And so some of that management piece of this is, and the human side of it is getting the staff to say, well, maybe not, right? Maybe it's not that tool, but your learning, your maturation, right? Your seeing what's real and what's not, and what's subtle and what's not so true. So 100%, that balancing act is the staff is like, yay, buy it. And, yeah, yay, buy it. Who's going to run it and manage it, right? There's still only 8, 9 people, 10 people. And so I think there's to your point, a ton of the leadership piece and management pieces is making sure that they're not so agog about a new piece of technology that they don't get wrapped up in that.
Yeah. Here's another thought that actually goes along with this. Woody mentioned when we were talking earlier about the board and leadership are now starting to think more and more about security risks, cybersecurity risks, intelligence, and everything else. As you are interacting, Kevin, from your side, as you're interacting with the peers that you have across the businesses, from Draper's standpoint, you've got engineering, you've got manufacturing, you've got supply chain, you've got all these other areas, you've got risk, compliance, HR. Are they starting to listen more? Are they, because I mean, it was always a struggle. I mean, it is, but are they starting to listen and understand where security, where information, where intelligence can help them as opposed to it be a barrier?
Sure, but only if I lead off with, and my peers lead off with, we're here to empower you to be successful. We have to lead off
Yeah.
with that. We can't lead off with, we're secure, blah, blah, security, blah, blah, technology, blah, blah, and watch them faint over from boredom, right? We have to lead off with, you literally, and so I'm the business guy from way back, right? Accounting firms when the covered wagons were rolling west, right? I'm really old, but so the business guy, right? So you have to tell those business folks, we want to make sure you're successful because I know that if your people aren't billing, I don't make any money. So I want you to be successful. And what you're telling me is you want to do this, and it might not be the most secure thing in the world, but I'll give you something that's secure. I will give you something that will work, I promise. Just let me help you. That's what you have to lead off with. And then you can get down to the security details about keeping all that information safe. But you better lead off with, I'm here to help, right? Or else they're just going to tune you out.
Interesting. Yeah. Again, I'm hearing that, but it's nice. It's nice hearing that from you. It's nice hearing that from that. Because again, people listening in on this are going to be like, oh, again, changing the conversation, learning how to have those collaborative conversations with the peers without going in. Unfortunately, we've had such a reputation of no, and it just doesn't work because now we've seen it all the bloody time. Everybody figures 10 different ways around us. So, and unfortunately, the intelligence is bearing that out. It's no longer an attack against the front door of the organization. Now the attacks are against the humans, the attacks against the soft targets, the third parties, the supply chain, and everything else, because we haven't done a good job of bringing everybody under the same umbrella, going, hey, we're all here trying to do the same thing. What other stuff? Well, I'm open conversations from the pair of you. I mean, okay, audience listening, what would you want to impart to them to help them understand the rabbit holes in the areas and the focuses, things they're going to need to think of as they start looking at this wonderful world that we deal with?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that came to mind to me while we were talking, and we've seen some even within Draper and the military and my other side as well, but insider threat. So how can intelligence help with the insider threat? A lot of that is training and awareness so people know what to look for, because that's obviously that you're in a way your greatest threat because they already have the keys, right? So it's how do you counter that, and then what to look for, and it gets a little stickier when you're talking about intelligence against your own people even at times, but it's really more behaviors and what to look like, because that. And sometimes it's just negligence or making a mistake. And one thing and we had an incident recently, and I'm not going to go into details, but I always talk with my staff of like, we tolerate honest mistakes because everybody makes that, and we learn from it and we grow. You're not going to get beat up because you made an honest mistake. But if you do something that's kind of dishonest or disingenuous, that's when there's going to be some serious consequences. So that's just kind of an aside, but really just maybe you, Chris, and Kevin, just what do you think about how intelligence can help us with the insider threat and what that might mean?
Totally agree, right? Totally on board, Woody. I think some of the nuanced pieces of this is if you're in an engineering organization, right? Folks, I think like Chris and Danny, right? I think if you and our people have this, not the skills that I would say Chris has, but they're skillful, right? MIT, they come from Caltech, right? They're brilliant engineers. We have 1,800 engineers, 1,700 engineers, Draper, and so they can take a laptop. It becomes a chew toy, right? And so they're an insider threat, maybe from the effect of they know how to get around the security aspects just because they want to work faster, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's the nuance part of the conversation. Hey, look, what do you need to work faster that will bless, as opposed to you going outside the realm of good conduct, to Woody's point, right? Why get yourself in trouble? Tell us what you need. What do you need? High performing compute? Do you need a big huge cluster somewhere where you can go out and bang away at some of the things you want to bang away at to be really innovative? Let's give them what they need so that they don't go around. And and the engineering organizations, again, they have way more talent to do that, right? As you know, Chris, right? You guys know how to get
Hmm.
around what tools are in place.
Totally.
So let's
Yeah.
give the people what they need to be successful.
I think the other part of that as well goes back to the human side of it. And this is where we've seen, to Woody's and both your guys' point, where we've seen like intelligence be useful, which is education. So perfect example. I mean, we there is a push in the industry for DevSecOps, and it shouldn't have to be, because we should all work together. We shouldn't have to come up with an acronym and a name to describe something we should be bloody well doing, but we're not doing it. So if I'm running intelligence on the organization and I start to find stuff sitting on GitHub and JetBrain and everywhere else with accounts and stuff in it, I got a couple of options. I can go and talk to the development team and go, "What the hell are you doing?" Or we can go along and go, "Hey, this is an educational chance to have a conversation
Mhm.
and go, this is why doing this, not so good. Let me, back to Kevin, your point, let me give you somewhere that you can collaborate. Or if you're going to collaborate out on the open side, let me help you understand how you're making yourself a target, the organization a target, what you can do to lower those risks." You turn that into from a confrontation into like, "Hey, let's collaborate. Let's give you the space. Let's help you understand. Let's build profiles for you." And I'm seeing a ton of that come out of a decent intelligence feed. I mean, we do it for some folks that we work with, high net worth folks. And I'm like, I
Mhm.
love the fact that you're posting on social media, but do me a favor, stop taking a picture of the darn house and its front number plate,
Right.
please. I just love you all to death, but don't do that. And that to me, I think, is another one of those areas where we can help. But again, we need to, that's a conversation with HR to go, "Hey, look, I know you love everybody inside the company, but we don't trust them.
Mhm.
You might do, and I love you to it, but I'm going to verify every single person on a daily basis because I don't trust them. I care for them, but I don't trust them. Because we're humans. And let
Mhm.
me do this, and let me do it in a way that educates, not in a punitive way, unless, to Woody's point, somebody's just deliberately going out there, at which point it's like different conversations.
I just say, trust but verify. That's the other piece. I
Yeah.
mean, an implicit level
I,
of trust you're going to have, and plus, most of our people have security clearances too, which helps because we have that piece. But
yeah.
again, I mean, that's part of the security training that we take. All of the known insider threats where people did work with other nation states, with espionage and provided classified information. There's plenty of stories to that, and that's part of our training and awareness to have that. So, in a way, that's intelligence as well, right? Of what the intelligence community obviously were able to eventually catch them a lot of times after they did a lot of damage, but again, we learn from that as we go, and that's always a threat.
Yeah, and for sure. And two, right? The other nuanced pieces. We don't want to just retain our information security staff. Of course, I do, but we want to maintain our workforce, right? And in this day and age, maintaining the workforce is giving them what they need to be successful, making them feel valued, right? So that they don't go out and look for other places. Because yeah, you know, there's a clamoring for people for jobs. I get that, right? The unemployment's at an all-time low, and people are looking for people to hire. And so, how do you get them on board and keep them? Well, you keep them by
Hmm.
giving them what they need to be successful, right? And so,
Yeah.
the conversations and HR is right to some degree to the effect of these conversations can't be you are bad, right? You bad, 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 and then they're just going to leave and go find somewhere else to work, and we've lost a huge resource, right? Really smart people that we need to
Hmm.
be successful. So all that has to be kept into perspective as we get the intelligence in and the information in. Okay, what are we going to do with it? Are we going to be punitive, or are we going to use it as an educational piece, as Woody mentioned?
We are approaching the top of the hour. I want to be very, very respectful of time. I would love some closing thoughts from both of you on kind of like almost where you see the future of this going, how
Mhm.
we see it evolving, where we see the future going, and just closing thoughts from both of you, if you wouldn't mind. Woody, please feel free to key off.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything's moving towards automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data analytics, all of that, and that's great. It's good to have that because it's an overload of data. It's overwhelming. It's just there's too much information out there to really be able for humans to ingest it. However, the other side of that coin is you have to have good humans. You have to have people that are passionate about what they do, and we're very fortunate at Draper. Our SOC staff, top notch. I can't say enough good things about Kevin and his team. It's just really good to have those people, like yourself, Chris, that just kind of have that security mindset and are always thinking about it and are able to use the tools, but also have that human factor that, puts it all together for something. And like Kevin said before, retaining that talent management, it's so much better to retain someone than to have to go out and find new people, not just the cost, the training and everything else. So, leadership is, being a servant leader and providing them with the tools and the resources they need to be successful. Then that success reflects back on the organization. So that's a big piece of my leadership style of how I do it, not micromanage and not be toxic to them, but just understand that they are there to do their job and give them what they need to do it. And that's the InfoSec staff, but that's also, like Kevin said, our engineers that are our bread and butter at Draper of what we do. So those kind of, my higher level thoughts.
I think Woody's spot on to the effect of the artificial intelligence, and then taking that out to taking the information we get, artificial intelligence, and then predictive analysis or predictive behavior. What's going to happen? What will that yield us in the future so that we can act upon it before it happens, right? I think that's huge. I think that has to be the next piece of this, right? How smart can our machines get us? And, one of my favorite things is an ounce of prevention's worth 10 pounds of cure, right? That's huge. And so I couldn't agree with Woody more in that regard. I think that the next future is how can the machines help us be quicker, faster, and more agile, ingesting the information and what's going to happen next.
That predictive intelligence is an amazing one. I'm doing some stuff with that one again, kicking off with the folks that are actually hosting this. We're doing some work on that, and there's some really, really cool ways of looking at that. And that, I think, again, it's, hey, I'm looking at this as a human. Do me a favor, go double check that. You keep that both of those sides rolling. Well, we have hit at the top of the hour, where we get cut and chopped and all sorts of other interesting stuff. But again, I want to be respectful. I'll give you guys time. So hugely appreciated. I can't thank you both enough on this one, and actually Danny as well for setting the whole blasted thing up. But Woody, Kevin, thank you. Totally thank you. An absolute honor and a pleasure to have you both on. And Danny, thank you for setting this up. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Dr. Dark Web. This show is brought to you by Cybersecurity, the threat intelligence company. If you would like to learn more, please feel free to follow or subscribe to Dr. Dark Web on your favorite podcast streamer. Or, as an alternative, you can always find us online at cybersecurity.com/podcast. You'll find all the latest episodes, goodies, nuggets of information, background, and probably some stickers or two. See you in the dark.